Two men who publicly called each other incompetent in English sat down in the same room today to decide whether the world goes back to war. One has never negotiated with Iran in his life. The other arrived in Islamabad with the public position that he already has grounds to walk out. This is not a political drama. This is happening right now. His name is J.D. Vance. 2 years in the U.S. Senate, slightly over 1 year as vice president. No prior face-to-face meetings with any Iranian official, ever. And today, after 41 days of war, more than 2,000 people killed, and 47 years of complete diplomatic silence between America and Iran, he is sitting across a table in Islamabad, Pakistan, leading the most consequential American diplomatic mission since the Cold War. This is not the assignment you give to your most experienced diplomat. So why is Vance in that room? Iran reportedly requested him specifically, rejecting Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner because Tehran accused both men of misrepresenting Iran's positions. Vance's own response when asked about this? I don't know that. I would be surprised if that was true, but I wanted to be involved because I thought I could make a difference. A man surprised he was chosen, in the room where the next war, or the next peace, gets decided. If you're just finding this channel, we cover every verified development as it happens. Subscribe and turn on notifications now so you never miss a confirmed breakthrough or a confirmed failure. But here is the detail that almost no outlet has reported at full weight. The man sitting across from Vance, Iran's parliamentary speaker Mohammad Baqer Qalibaf, made a public statement the day before flying to Islamabad. He did not express optimism. He did not call for compromise. He said, and this is documented, time is running out, not as encouragement. As a warning, Iran's lead negotiator arrived in Pakistan with a public statement that he already has grounds to walk away. That statement is the most important signal about what happens inside that room, and most of the coverage missed it entirely. We will tell you why it matters. But first, you need to understand who Qalibaf actually is, because the American media has not fully explained what his presence in this room means. Qalibaf is not a diplomat. He is not a foreign minister. He is a former commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Air Force, a man who spent decades inside the IRGC before moving into political life as mayor of Tehran and then parliamentary speaker. He is the same man who said on Wednesday that 3 ceasefire clauses had already been violated before talks began. He is the same man who called the negotiations in public unreasonable before he boarded the plane to attend them. He is the same man who, when Vance dismissed Iran's first proposal as something probably written by ChatGPT, responded by publicly questioning whether Vance was capable of understanding English properly. Vance fired back that Qalibaf said things that frankly didn't make sense. These two men, this room, this week. We've been covering this story from the first strike. If this level of detail is useful to you, hit subscribe. It takes 2 seconds, and it means you get the real analysis, not the spin. Now, here's where the negotiation hits a wall that looks from the outside completely unclimbable. The United States' position is absolute. Trump posted on Truth Social, there will be no enrichment of uranium. Defense officials described enriched uranium as something the U.S. will take voluntarily or through renewed military action. National Security Advisor Leavitt called enrichment a red line the president is not going to back away from. Vance said the U.S. has all the cards and wants the nuclear fuel. 4 senior American officials, 4 public statements, 1 non-negotiable position, communicated before anyone entered the room. Iran's position is equally absolute, in the opposite direction. Qalibaf specifically identified Trump's public denial of enrichment rights as the 3rd ceasefire violation, the very grounds on which he called these talks unreasonable. Iran's publicly released proposal explicitly demands enrichment rights. The Farsi-language ceasefire document distributed by IRGC-affiliated media includes the phrase acceptance of enrichment, a phrase completely absent from the English version shared with journalists. Iran's atomic energy chief said any attempt to limit enrichment would fail. The Supreme Leader's written statement told forces to stop firing for the time being, while a separate message promised revenge. 2 absolute positions, 1 room, 2 weeks before the military deadline. But here is the detail that changes everything and explains why these talks have not already collapsed. U.S. National Security Advisor Leavitt said on Wednesday, We were given indications that they will turn over the enriched uranium, a private Iranian signal, completely contradicting Iran's public posture. If that private signal is real, it means Iran's public insistence on enrichment rights is a domestic performance, designed to protect regime legitimacy with an Iranian population that supported the war, while the actual negotiating position is far more pragmatic. The gap between what Iran says publicly and what it communicates privately may be the only road through this wall. But here is the question that nobody can answer yet, and it is the question that Islamabad must answer today. We will get to that. But first, the operational crisis that nearly ended the talks before the first session concluded. Pakistan brokered these talks. Pakistan sealed its capital city, deployed hundreds of paramilitary forces, positioned shipping containers across key roads, and approved visas for 20 international media organizations to document the moment. And then, on the same morning the talks began, Pakistan's own defense minister posted on X that genocide is being committed in Lebanon and called Israel a cancerous state that should burn in hell. Israel's prime minister's office called the remarks outrageous. Pakistan deleted the post. The mediating country had to apologize to one of the parties connected to the conflict before the first session of the talks it brokered had concluded. Meanwhile, Maersk, the world's largest container shipping company, confirmed the ceasefire does not yet provide sufficient certainty to resume normal operations. Before the war, 120 to 150 ships transited the Strait of Hormuz every day. In the first 24 hours after the ceasefire announcement, 3 ships moved through. Iranian media published navigation instructions requiring all vessels to coordinate with the IRGC Navy. The White House demands Iran reopen the strait without limitations. Iran says it will charge fees and require IRGC coordination. The oil market priced a reopening. The ships are not moving. We've broken multiple details on this story that major outlets confirmed hours later. Subscribe and share this before Islamabad produces its first result. What happens in that room in the next 48 hours will affect oil prices, global shipping, and whether the next phase of this conflict is diplomatic or military. And here is the structural problem that every analyst is quietly talking about, and nobody has solved on camera. The IRGC is not in the room in Islamabad. Iran's political leadership is present. Iran's military command, the structure that conducted independent targeting decisions throughout the entire war, the structure that controls the weapons and the strait, is not present and has not formally committed to the ceasefire in the same terms as Iran's foreign ministry. Which means, even if Qalibaf and Vance produce a document, the entity with its hand on the trigger did not sign it. That tension between the delegation in the room and the command structure outside it is the internal Iranian constraint that determines whether any agreement reached in Islamabad is actually implemented, or whether it exists only on paper while the IRGC operates by a different set of instructions entirely. We will come back to what that means for the final agreement, but you need to hear Trump's exact words first. Trump posted on Truth Social late Wednesday, all U.S. ships, aircraft, weapons, and military personnel will remain in place in and around Iran until a full agreement is reached. If for any reason it is not, which is highly unlikely, and then the shooting starts, bigger and better and stronger than anyone has ever seen before. The military posture is still in position. The operational plan for strikes on Iranian energy infrastructure is still ready. The 2-week ceasefire window is the only documented interval between the current fragile silence and a resumption of strikes that both sides have publicly said will be worse than what preceded them. Islamabad is not just a diplomatic meeting. It is the only mechanism that exists, right now, to close the distance between two absolute positions before that window closes. What happens inside that room today cannot be predicted, but it can be understood. And understanding it requires honest answers to 3 questions the analysis has not yet resolved. Question A. Iran's lead negotiator arrived saying time is running out and that negotiations were unreasonable. Vance called Iran's first proposal ChatGPT garbage. These 2 men are now tasked with producing a framework that ends a war. Diplomatic negotiations have succeeded from worse starting positions, but they typically require both sides to want the deal more than they want to maintain their public posture. Based on the documented evidence, which side wants this deal more? And does wanting it more give you leverage or make you vulnerable? Question B. The enrichment question broke the February negotiations that preceded the war. Trump says no enrichment, period. Iran's Farsi ceasefire document says acceptance of enrichment. Levitt says Iran privately indicated it will surrender the enriched uranium. If Islamabad produces a document both sides can take home, what does the paragraph on nuclear enrichment actually say? Is there any formulation that Trump can call denuclearization and Iran can simultaneously call the right to peaceful nuclear technology? Question C. Pakistan's defense minister deleted an anti-Israel post on the day the talks began. The IRGC is not in the room. 3 ships are transiting the strait instead of 150. Netanyahu is bombing Lebanon while Vance negotiates. Trump's military remains in position with a shoot-again threat on standby. Iran's supreme leader promised revenge while ordering a temporary halt to firing. If every structural element of this negotiation is working against its success, what is the specific mechanism that produces a permanent agreement anyway? And what does that agreement look like the morning after both sides sign? Drop your most analytical answer below. The sharpest responses get featured. Share this now, before Islamabad produces its first result. And if you are not subscribed yet, this is the story that will define the next decade of American foreign policy. You want to be here when it breaks.